Hi, welcome to another video from Inclusive Driving. In today's video, we have a look at driving on smart motorways. It won't be a general motorway driving video, there are already plenty of those around on the internet. Instead, this video will look at some of the features of smart motorways, such as variable speed limits, matrix signs, dynamic hard shoulders, and all-lane running. Due to the way modern cameras work, the motorway signs appear to flicker. To make things clearer, we've added on-screen graphics to make the signs easier to read. There were some features that we didn't encounter while out filming, such as lane closures. These usually happen in response to accidents, so in a way we're glad they didn't occur. But we'll keep gathering footage, and we may include these events on another video later in the year. So we've got a sign warning of a variable speed limit, so we should expect to see some signs on the overhead gantry telling us what speed limit and giving us some more information about lane closures, that sort of thing. And here's another sign saying Roadworks End national speed limit. Now the overhead matrix sign coming up is telling us that lanes 2, 3 and 4 are open. If we're in lane 1 as we are at the moment, we need to do a lane change and move across. On the left is a sign to say there's an emergency refuge area coming up. If the hard shoulder was being used as an active running lane during busy periods and you broke down, you would be in the traffic flow. So here's an emergency refuge that you would do your utmost to try and reach, maybe by freewheeling or crawling along slowly if necessary. Another sign saying SOS emergency area in about a third of a mile. In 300 yards. And remember, if you're doing about 60 miles an hour, that's only going to take you about 10 seconds to reach. You want to do your best to get off the motorway into that emergency area. Because the motorway is quite quiet at the moment, there are no variable speed limit signs. So we're on a speed limit of 70 for cars, national speed limit. Notice at the moment my windscreen wash isn't very powerful. That's because it's actually frozen. The jet on the right hand side, the driver's side, seems to be working, but the left side is still frozen. As the engine warms up, that will thaw out. And again, that's something to be aware of when driving in winter conditions. On this stretch of motorway, it is smart motorway because we've got the overhead signs to tell us what speed limit there is at the moment, although at the moment they're all switched off. But notice how this is now a 4-lane motorway. There is no hard shoulder. So this used to be 3 lanes with a hard shoulder, and to ease congestion it's been turned into all-lane running, so 4-lane motorway. You will often find that the left lane becomes signposted for a particular destination. So very shortly you'll see a sign saying something like left lane for such and such a destination only. Note also that there aren't many emergency refuge areas here. So what would you do if you broke down when there's no hard shoulder? It's extremely important to get your hazard warning lights on and evacuate your vehicle. Get everybody out behind the crash barrier. overhead sign coming up. No specific speed limits, but we do have a matrix sign giving us information about future roadworks. Here's one of the emergency refuge areas coming up on the left. Into an area where there's some roadworks and the speed limit has been reduced to 60. And a warning that lane 4 is going to close. The yellow sign on the right is telling me that. This sign is telling us that all of the lanes are going to do a bit of a shimmy over to the left. Now I'm going to come off at the next junction, so once I'm past this lorry I will tuck into the left hand lane, lane 1. Ease off my speed slightly to match the car in front. I've got a good distance behind me now. Signal, mirror check, tuck in. My windscreen wash is thawing out very slowly. There we are, the wash bottle on the left, the sprayer on the left is now working properly. There appears to be no traffic coming in the other direction, so I'm wondering if the motorway is closed due to roadworks in that direction. Well, the fact that traffic has slowed down in this direction as well, maybe there is an accident that people are having a bit of a nosy at. There's two cars in the opposite direction just come on the slip road. There seems to be nothing coming from beyond that junction. We're coming off at this junction anyway, so we'll see what the state of play is as we go around the roundabout. So as we go down this slip road or the deceleration lane, we'll take up a right turn position. We're going to turn right, go full circle on the roundabout and rejoin the M6 heading south. An end of motorway sign. A sign for national speed limit. That's because we were reduced to 60 miles an hour for the roadworks, but that's now straight away been changed to a 40 because we're now just on a general A road. So full circle on the roundabout, rejoin the M6. An ambulance there. I'm suspecting that there has been some kind of accident on the motorway, which explains why there was no traffic coming towards us. As we join the acceleration lane, got 50-mile-an-hour limit. Apologies if there's a bit of a shine on the camera, we've got sun in the wrong place and a wet road, so that may cause a little bit of glare on the camera lens. So let's see if there's anything more interesting on the overhead matrix signs and the speed limit signs in this direction. Given that there's no traffic in this direction whatsoever, I'm suspecting that maybe we're not going to see anything interesting. So this is an example of all lane running. There is no hard shoulder, we just have the emergency refuge areas periodically on the left. We've got an enforced speed limit of 50 due to roadworks that we can't see at the moment. Of course, I'm driving in lane 1 because I'm not overtaking anybody. Here's the start of the M6 toll. That's a road that you have to pay to go on. These are the prices for various vehicles at certain times of day. If you want to use the toll road, you will need to move over to lane 3 or lane 4. Lanes 1 and 2 go onto the old M6, which you don't pay for. Toll road, you will need to move over to lane 3 or lane 4. Lanes 1 and 2 go onto the old M6, which you don't pay for. This sign is telling us that for the M6 toll we would need lanes 3 or 4, and we can use lanes 1, 2 or 3 to access the M6. Keep your eyes on lane 3 and you'll see how there is a little slip road from there that comes over to our side of the motorway. In fact, there's no one behind us, let's go and show you. So lane 3 we're in, and if we still wanted not to go down the M6 toll, we wanted just the M6, we've still got a last minute opportunity here to join the normal M6. This will of course put us into lane 3 on the M6 carriageway, so let's do some safe lane changes over to lane 1. Now that we're getting in towards Wolverhampton, I'm hoping that we will see something more interesting on the variable speed limits and the matrix signs. This one's not looking good.
There are several ways to help this channel. Like this video so that it gets shown to other people. Share it with your friends on social media to make sure that they see it. And most of all, subscribe to the channel to show your ongoing support and help me keep creating new content.
I can see some variable speed limit signs in the distance, so we'll see what those have got to say. There's a red circle, so that suggests to me that the speed limit is 60 or less. If the speed limit was still 70, it would either show nothing at all or it would show a national speed limit sign. So already we can tell that we will need to be slowing down to 60 by the time we get to that sign. I'm currently doing 70. I am just going to start easing off the gas. I've got my cruise control now set to 60. We have a speed limit sign over lanes 1, 2 and 3, not the hard shoulder, so the hard shoulder is out of bounds unless it's a breakdown or a medical emergency at the moment. We've got traffic joining us from the left. Warning sign to tell me that there's some roadworks coming up in 3 miles. Okay, next matrix sign. There is a red cross in lane 1 that tells us that we cannot drive in lane 1. Let's slow down a little bit because I'm catching the car in front. The speed limit in lanes 2, 3 and 4 is reduced to 60. May well also see a reminder sign on the matrix sign to say hard shoulder is open for emergencies only. So again, here we come. Hard shoulder for emergency use only, a red cross in the hard shoulder. So we cannot drive in there. We could of course drive through it to access the emergency refuge or use the hard shoulder if it was a breakdown or a medical emergency. Still have a red cross in the hard shoulder and a temporary speed limit of 60 miles an hour in lanes 2, 3 and 4. Emergency refuge on the left. And a sign to tell us that the next emergency refuge is in 300 yards. We would need that if the hard shoulder was open as a live running lane. We would try and get to the emergency refuge to stay out of the way of traffic that was legally using the hard shoulder if it was open. Of course, at the moment we have a red cross above the hard shoulder, so it is closed. 60 mile an hour speed limit in all other lanes. Overhead signs that are coming up. We're now being told that lanes 2, 3 and 4 are back up to national speed limit. The hard shoulder is still closed with a red cross. However, immediately after this national speed limit sign we've got a 60 mile an hour sign because of the roadworks. So theoretically we can do 60 now, sorry 70 now, but we've got to reduce to 60 for the roadworks anyway. Sign on the left says that the left hand lane will take us to junction 10 only. We can't go in there at the moment, it's still closed as a hard shoulder. That lane will end soon, it will turn into a dotted line. We're going to proceed ahead, following signs for south and southwest. Still in a 60 mile an hour limit because of the roadworks, although the overhead signs are saying 70. Let's go with the lower one of 60 for the roadworks. Now the next overhead sign is displaying no speed limits at all, but we are still in a roadwork, so we're still governed by the 60 mph sign that we saw at the side of the road. And I'm suspecting that the overhead signs have been turned off just to avoid any confusion. Sign to say roadworks are ending. We are back up to national speed limit. Let's see what the overhead signs are telling us. I'm just going to hold back a little bit, let this car want to join into our lane. So the matrix sign is saying if you're in lane 1, move over because it's going to close soon. Now, because the motorway is flowing quite freely and it's quiet, there's no information on the overhead signs, so we can still assume a national speed limit here of 70 mph for cars. This overhead sign is saying that if we want the M5 we need lane 1. If we want the M6 we need lanes 2 or 3. Matrix sign is now saying hard shoulder for emergency use only. However, is there a hard shoulder? Yes there is. The hard shoulder is starting here. We want to continue on the M6, we don't want the M5. Let's have a look at this next overhead sign. So lane 1, extreme left is M5, lane 2 is M5 and M6, that's where we are at the moment, and lanes 3 and 4 are for M6 only. So I want the M6, so I am okay in here. If I wanted the M5 I would still have an opportunity to leave at this point. No information on the overhead sign, so we would assume still a national speed limit of 70 mph. We're going to leave the M6 and do full circle on the roundabout and head back in the opposite direction and see what we can find along that stretch of motorway. No information on the overhead signs coming up. We're being told junction for A34 we will be leaving soon, and junction 7 is 1 mile. Full circle on the roundabout to rejoin the M6 heading north. warning sign for variable speed limits, just to tell us to be aware of looking over the carriageway to see what the information is. No information on the overhead signs, so a national speed limit of 70 does apply. Next emergency refuge is 1¼ miles away. So at 60 miles an hour that would take you over a minute to reach. Now this is why we do our flowers checks. We want to reduce the likelihood of breaking down. Some things are unavoidable. Punctures to a certain extent are unavoidable. However, if you make sure your tyres are in good condition, they are going to be stronger and more durable and less likely to suffer from a puncture. No information on the overhead signs. We do have a warning sign to tell us that traffic will be joining us from the left. No speed limits on the next signs, but we are being informed that the M6 is closed further ahead at junctions 13 to 14. That would help us make alternative arrangements. Maybe get a passenger to reprogram the sat-nav for you to avoid that area. Roadworks in 1 mile. Whenever you see roadworks on a motorway, you can expect the speed limit to be reduced to 60 or 50. Towards the end of 2020, a decision was made that the speed limit for roadworks where no work was actually being done at the time could be 60, whereas roadworks where people were actually doing work, it would be reduced to 50. Prior to that, there was a blanket 50-mile-an-hour restriction for all roadworks, whether they were occupied by people or not. Somebody's stolen my braking distance, so I'm just going to claim it back. Hard shoulder is ending, and we want to leave the motorway at this junction, so over we go with this safe lane change.
Well, thanks for coming on today's journey, and I hope to see you on another video very soon.